Forum. We're really excited to have you all here tonight. Oh yes, si quieren escuchar la traducción en español, tienen que solamente ponerse al oído y le va a dar la traducción. Okay. Buenas tardes. So welcome. My name is Lorena. I'm a first generation college student at UC Berkeley. I joined SFER last December, so a year ago. The reason why I joined SFER was because of my experience in the K-12 school system. Growing up, I always saw the obstacles that my parents were facing, and I noticed the importance of an education. So I always wanted, my parents always put that on me, like, you know, education's gonna be our way out, education, and that always encouraged me, and that was my biggest motivation. And I know that's the motivation for a lot of other low-income students and students of color, but I also know that there's a lot of obstacles that we need to face, and that we face in the school system. So that's why I joined SFER, to get involved in fighting to end those obstacles. Now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague.
Hello everyone. Sorry. My name is Stephanie. Thank you all for coming. I'm also a first generation Latina from a single parent household, and SFER means a lot to me because growing up, college wasn't a given for me. I didn't hear the word college until I was like about in the 3rd grade, and it was just very vaguely, and I discovered I had to keep going after high school. I wasn't just done. But since then, it's been very much a struggle to get to where I am today because of the lack of knowledge and resources at home. The language barrier was very difficult for my parents as well, because I couldn't get the help that I needed after school because I had to go home and help my mom clean the house and take care of my nieces and nephews. So being able to be here and create that pathway for students to get to where I am today is very powerful for me, because I know that by opening up those pathways, we're opening up the doors to so many students with so much potential that will change the world.
Thank you everyone again for coming. My name is Raquel Antolin, and I am currently on SFER staff. I started with SFER as a student back when I was a junior in college, and I realized through SFER that my voice was important, and that through my voice I could actually create a change. Growing up here in Richmond, I was exposed to everything, right? Violence, gangs. I actually joined the gang when I was 16 years old, and through that experience I was living a double life. And I knew if it wasn't for outside entities that helped me, Making Waves Education Program, they had high expectations of me. They had the highest supports that believed in me and told me, you're gonna go to college, telling a 10-year-old little girl, you're gonna go to college. And to me, that was a blessing. And if it wasn't for them, and for the love and support from my parents, my family, I would not be where I'm at today. I'm a first generation college student. I graduated with a bachelor's from Sacramento State, and I'm the first one in my family to go to college, and I'm the baby. And I do this work in my community because I strongly believe that every child has the potential to achieve the sky. It is, every child has that ability to do whatever they want to do. And I want to see a lot of new leadership coming into our board, and want to hear your ideas and thoughts of how we're really gonna make some radical changes now. Thank you, and now we are going to do a brief intro of our students that are in the audience.
Hi, my name is Noreen Sardar. I joined SFER this year, like 6 months ago. The reason why I joined SFER was like the same, like to take action. I see a lot of, I haven't been to high school here, but my sister, she's in high school, but I see a lot of difficulties she's faced through high school. Like to have to take an action and to support her to go like what's going on in her academic curricular activities, and also to support my my race. Like a lot of women, or they're not taking action, they just stay behind, or they stay quiet, or they're not getting education, to motivate them to come out and take the opportunity to speak up in the public. Like, don't be scared of speaking in public. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Noreen.
Hi, my name is Marisol. I'm on staff here with SFER, and just for logistical wise, I will be timekeeping for tonight, so please stop when I put up the stop sign. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Calderon. I will be one of the wonderful candidates here who will be asking questions. I am a firm believer of positive school climate. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, so I went through the whole LUSD district, and if you're familiar, they're going through some trouble at the time. But I've witnessed a lot of the educational inequalities that can occur in public education, and I feel like the views in public education have certainly changed over the years, not in a positive way. And I think it's time to change that, and that's why I've joined SFER to, change those views.
Hi everyone, my name is Ariana and I go to San Francisco State University. I'm part of SFER because people tend to say that education is the key to success, but is it really if it's not given equally to all students? That's why I'm here with SFER to fight for the injustices in our school system. And I was also born and raised here in Richmond. So, yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Brianna. I'm a third junior transfer at UC Berkeley, and I just joined SFER this summer because I also, really believe in the value of education, and I think that it has to be accessible to everyone, and it wasn't always accessible to me growing up. So I just, want to be here to help change the system.
So my name is Pamela. I would say I'm going to my 5th year of Contra Costa College. The reason why I joined SFER was because I'm a product of the West Contra Costa Unified School District, and I know what's been going on. And same thing with my sisters and brothers and everyone else in my family, and they're going through the same thing that I went through when I was going through the K-12 system.
Okay, so we're just going to start off with a brief introduction, so if you guys can introduce yourselves and then why you're running for school board.
My name is Stephanie Hernandez-Jarvis, and I'm a public school teacher at Stewart School in Pinole, and this is my 5th year teaching. I came here to the United States at the age of 10 from Ensenada, Baja California, Norte Mexico, and I lived in Los Angeles, and Maywood, and Bakersfield, and Santa Barbara, Goleta, and I'm here. It's my 5th year living here. I'm also a mother, and I really care about helping all of our children and making sure that they all have a great quality education. And as a teacher, I see the struggles day to day to provide our kids with the education that they need. My husband's also a teacher, and we're really invested in making sure that our kids have the best, education possible, and that our daughter, when she enters the WCCUSD classrooms here, is, prepared to be supported by great teachers and great admin. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Val Cuevas. I'm currently serving as a school board president. I'm concluding my first term. I ran for school board for the first time in 2014. I'm seeking one more opportunity to serve you in 2018, so you're going to get a chance to vote for 3 folks. I hope you'll make Val Cuevas one of your votes, and the reason why I hope you'll do that is because I'm the oldest of 6 kids. My mother was 16, my father was 17 when I was born. And by the time they were 21, they had 4 kids. And that shaped my life. We grew up in very humble beginnings, but grew up with a lot of love and a lot of belief that we were capable of doing anything we put our minds to. And we had the support of family. I lived with my grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles, all in understanding what housing insecurity meant. That touched my life in many ways, but I knew the one thing that was stable was having access to high quality education. And that started with being a student in Head Start, so early childhood education, and then working in elementary school, being identified as gifted and talented, and then getting through high school and being the first in my family to graduate from USC. And then I liked helping students so much I went back to be a professional at colleges and universities, so those people who work in student affairs, in academic advising, orientation, housing, financial aid, helping students. That's where I started my career. I moved up to the Bay Area and had the opportunity to serve in many capacities, and I've been fortunate to be on the board now. And every time I see that sign that says stop, I'm going to say vote for Val.
I like that, Val.
My name is Tiffany Grimsley. I'm a Bay Area native. I grew up in El Cerrito and I attended schools in El Cerrito and Richmond. And then I went off to UC Santa Barbara where I majored in communication studies and black studies. I was at UC Santa Barbara that I had my first job working with students. I worked with the Office of Relations with Schools in their outreach program, so I was one of those people that would call you if you hadn't returned your statement of intent to register. After I left Santa Barbara, I went into teaching at Berkeley High School, and like a lot of other brand new teachers, I didn't stay there long. I ended up working for the University of California. That's where I found my career. I spent 8 years as Assistant Director of Admissions at the Haas School of Business. I spent another 3 years working in the School of Public Health, managing their budgets and working in student affairs. I really love working with students, and as a parent now of kids who've attended schools in West Contra Costa Unified School District, I've had a chance to volunteer at schools. I've had an opportunity to work for the school district for a bit as a yard supervisor and instructional aide in the classroom. I sat on a school site committee at my youngest son's elementary school. He's sitting in the back row. He's now in middle school. And, you know, what I heard was from a lot of parents and a lot of teachers was a lot of dissatisfaction, feeling like their voices weren't being heard, as some of you spoke to. So as a member of the school board, one of the things I really want to do is sort of be a conduit between the community and the school board so that your voices are heard. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Liz Block, and I'm currently on the board. I'm running for re-election. Working with children. I started tutoring when I was 15. I remember doing it in Akron, Ohio, where I was raised until I was 16 years old. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and believe me, even coming from the same country, it was a culture shock. What was the New Yorker magazine? What was NPR? All these things that I had never been to museums. So there are a lot of things that when you go to college are different. And we all share sometimes the burden of going back to families who haven't gone to college and living with the differences. But I started out as a school psychologist. It was really important to me for individual children's needs to be met, both learning and social. I thought I could help more kids by becoming a special education administrator so that I was setting up classes of children with special needs and making sure that their needs were met in that way. Then I wanted to work as a principal so that I could have all the kids in the school feel good. And I worked in an elementary school in Bay Point and turned it around after 1 year with a lot of hard work from the teachers and parents also. So I'm hoping we can have a panel just like this with the SFER students telling us what's wrong. We need to get students like yourselves informing us more about what's going on so that we really know. Because I can guarantee you, I have to stop now.
Good evening. My name is Michael Gonzalez. I'm here because for many years I thought I was just born mad. Then I realized that what was burning inside of me was a passion to do something about the savage inequalities that I saw growing up. I grew up in San Francisco. I've been living in Richmond for 19 years. And the reality is this: education is a weapon. It's used in a variety of ways, but it's always used as a weapon. I want to be a part of turning that weapon towards the benefit of the people that weapon has been used against. Because in doing so, I think what we do is improve our society as a whole. I've been a classroom teacher, I've been a principal, I've actually worked in over 25 school districts throughout the state of California, turning those districts around. None of that is as important as the fact that I have a passion to help people and I'll bring that passion to this board to bring about change.
Good evening, my name is Anthony Gatto, and I just wanted to make a note that I missed my father-in-law's birthday today to be here with you. I know how important it was for me to show up today and be here for the community. So I was actually a former SFER member. I was actually the Bay Area lead organizer. I was a student at UC Berkeley, and that's where I met my fiance. She was on SFER staff, and we've been doing this work ever since. Part of my journey was being one of those students that Liz Block mentioned, just coming to school board meetings and advocating for different policies and different issues. And here I am. I went from advocating for issues to actually trying to run to be a part of the decision-making process for these issues. So while I was a student, while I was a member of Students for Education Reform, I noticed something in this district specifically, and that's that students weren't being trained in the high schools on how to solve their own problems when it comes to civics and when it comes to policy solutions. So I formed my own organization called Citizens Power Network, where we work with high school students around the importance of voting and civic engagement. So this would be my senior year at Cal, but I actually took the year off to run for office and to start this organization. Since then, I've been a part of a number of initiatives. I'm not sure if y'all have heard of March for Our Lives, but I put that on with the high school students that I work with. This past Saturday, we had 250 community members come out to learn about the importance of voting and civic engagement. And this is the type of work that I do, and this is the type of work that I'm proud of. So the reason why I'm here and I'm running for school board is because I don't see one of us up there on the board. I don't see a young person that listens to the community and that understands what's going on here. I don't see anybody like that pushing for initiatives. So after constantly pushing for work while with SFER, I decided that I wanted to run for office, and here I am today. Thank you.
Good evening. Buenas noches. Patricio Lujan. My name is Patricio Lujan, and I'm running for school board because I think we can do better. We need to have a positive change for all of our students across West Contra Costa. And I want to bring valuable perspectives and experiences that I have had throughout my life to the community and to the school board. I'm a Latino immigrant. Y vine a los Estados Unidos cuando tenía 7 años. And I came to the United States when I was 7, speaking no English. And thanks to public school education, I was able to not only learn to read, but to be academically successful. Same with my brother and my sister. And we all 3 attended Cal. And then I went on to graduate school at UC San Diego, and then I dedicated my career to education. I taught elementary and middle school, actually in Newark, New Jersey, a district that has a lot of the same challenges, and the students are facing, unfortunately, some of the same trauma that many of our West Contra Costa students are facing. So I know what it's like from a classroom perspective, working with students, working with families. And then I continued in education, and I work now nationally with superintendents and education leaders as they turn around their schools and districts. And I want to bring that expertise to West Contra Costa and really focus on what's needed, transforming schools for students, for all students. I have 2 daughters that are in public school. They attend Washington Elementary in Point Richmond, 6th grade and 1st grade. So as a parent, I know the importance of the engaging in the community. I know some of the challenges that it's like as a parent trying to engage with the board and the community. I want to bring that perspective as well. So I humbly ask for your vote. So vote for Patricio on November 6th.
Okay. I'll be presenting the first question. You will have 1 minute to answer it, so please listen carefully. Currently, many parents and students feel that their voices are not being considered when the school board is making important decisions. What is your interpretation of the current school climate resolution in terms of parent and student involvement? What structures would you implement in order to ensure outreach is being made and their input and ideas are not only heard but considered when making decisions about student achievement and safety?
Yeah, as I said earlier in my opening statement, as a father, it was, and I'm one that's involved. I'm a former teacher. My wife is a former teacher as well. So we're in the know, and we had a hard time finding out what was happening. So I think there's a lack of coherence across the school district and across schools. I see, and we've been to 3 forums lately This one, the Bayside PTA, and the Parents Council. And those are the forums that had the most people. So the school district had forums and there was like 3-5 people that attended. So there isn't really a coherent plan around communication and community engagement. And there's all these great groups that are having activities that the district isn't having, and it's not happening. I wouldn't even say in parallel, it's just not happening. So as a school board member, I would establish those partnerships, be it through committee or on regular meetings, to really get the community involved on a regular basis and work with SFERs, the PTAs, the Parents Council, and have a regular voice, not only at the meetings, but as we're preparing for the meetings.
So I'm not sure how many of y'all went to school around here, but there's a huge distinction between our schools that are in the flatlands and our schools that are in the hills, as I'm sure you know. Recently, over the summer, Kennedy High School and El Cerrito High School both got new principals. But two different things happened though. At El Cerrito High School, they had a community meeting and 100 parents showed up where they got to say, this is what we want from our principal. And they got to hear their community input. That same process did not happen at Kennedy High School. At Kennedy High School, they weren't even made aware that they were getting new principals. So as a school board member, I want to make transparent policies that really try to engage everybody in the process. When I talked to the community director, he said, oh, we didn't think that we'd get as many engaged parents at Kennedy High School. So there are systems in place right now that are preventing this community engagement, and I want to pass policies that not only allow for community engagement, but that promote it. Thank you.
Can you ask the last part of the question again, please?
What structures would you implement in order to ensure outreach is being made and their input and ideas are not only heard, but considered when making decisions about student achievement and safety?
What we need to do in terms of engaging parents to have safer, more accountable schools is to put in place a system very much like the system that's in place for substitute teachers. We need a clearinghouse at the district level that identifies the gaps and the needs within specific schools, and then provide parent volunteers the training and opportunity to support those specific needs. The other thing I would do is identify resources in the community like Anthony that could organize people, show up, and raise issues to the point that they have to be addressed and cannot be ignored.
Well, the first thing I would do in this situation is ask parents what's working and what's not working, and what they think would be good structures in which they could communicate two-way with the board members. It's very frustrating, I'm sure, now when people come to the board and make a comment, we can't even say anything back, and that feels wrong to me. So what I would propose is even having smaller meetings, either prior to board meetings, well, definitely not after, because they read late, but that's the time when we do have a lot of people who might be able to, and if we had a different format where we could listen to parents, that might work. But here I am, I'm planning, and I'm asking the parents. So that's what I would do first, but we do need to work together because we can't succeed without parents, and we wouldn't have the schools without the parents and the students, their kids.
In the current climate, my experience is that there are a lot of groups of people who feel, and individual people who feel that their voices are not being heard. Students feel that their voices aren't being heard, parents feel that their voices aren't being heard, teachers feel that their voices aren't being heard. We need to make more of a collaborative effort so that everyone's voices are heard. It's not feasible for everyone to come out for a board meeting on a Tuesday night and sit for 4 hours hoping that their little question on their little piece of paper is going to get addressed later on. So I think we have to change the way we do business. We have to engage people in a way that makes sense for the community. And the first thing we need to do is ask the community, the members of the community. We need to ask students, we need to ask parents, we need to ask teachers. What is it that you need from us? What is it, how is it that you'd like us to communicate with you? And how would you like us, for you to be able to communicate with us? we need to start there.
Well, serving on the school board has been a privilege, and I think one of the best ways I've demonstrated I respect parents is I've been very consistent as a school board member in terms of engaging students, engaging families, trying to find voice. You're going to find that if you look back at the record, I'm often the one that's voting in ways that help empower parent and student voices. And that's not the case for every single board member, and it's difficult. And even there are things that are inconsistent. For example, in a subcommittee that I helped start with Mr. Groves, that Mr. Panis and I were sitting on, we decided that one of the best ways we could help parents was to make school site councils more stronger. So we asked staff to come and we started hearing from parents, how can we make it more stronger? Well, 3 members of our board decided that committee shouldn't exist anymore. They wanted to kill that committee, and that was a mechanism by which we could help parents have stronger response and feel more part of our system. And then, instead, we did a hiatus on our committees, and then I got told, well, you haven't brought committees back. Well, the reason I haven't brought it back is because people wanted to kill the one committee that actually would have helped parents and students. And that's what I mean by being consistent. You will know who your voices are on that board. And to be quite frank, don't forget to vote for Val.
Regarding the school climate resolution, I don't believe that there's anything that has actually been done at the school level. I think it looks good on paper, but in practice, there's nothing practical about it. We just started a social emotional learning curriculum at our school, and the implementation of it is hard without all the staff that we need. We lack playground supervisors to ensure the safety of our kids. So how do we have a safe place if we don't have enough people there to actually, take care of our children when they're in the playground? I teach kindergarten, so we get a lot of, we were playing and we bumped into each other. And whenever there's a head injury, we have to call the office. The office staff has their own work to do. They have to take care of attendance, they have to take care of other things that are clerical in nature, and we have to interrupt their work. So that creates chaos in the office. We don't have schools that nurture safety in the way that we should, socially and physically or emotionally. And I think that leads to a lot of stress for kids and parents. So we need to use community leaders like the West Contra Costa Parents Council, like the Latina Center, and really grow those leaders and help them make forums with us so that people attend them jointly. Thank you.
Our second question here. So I began to struggle with mental health in high school, and the lack of availability and awareness of mental health resources really prevented me from getting any help until I got to college. And so based on the current SRO contract, the district pays the entire salary of SROs, which costs millions a year. Would you vote yes to eliminate the SRO budget and redirect that funding into social emotional resources?
So, testing.
To clarify, it's a yes or no question.
Oh, it should say yes.
Just yes or no? There's an update, though, that I think is not taken into account with this question. Can I say the update, or? Okay, so socio and emotional funds come from the DLCAP, the Local Control and Accountability Plan. Since the last few months ago, SROs are now funded by the general funds, so the money that was used for the SROs and the DLCAP has been freed up to fund mental health programs. So that question, to close the program, the programs have moved over so that those funds are now available.
So yes or no? Would you fund social emotional resources?
I want to fund social emotional resources, yes.
Who would say no? Yes.
Yes, and I think it will also get at student behavior. So dual focus. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did. I fought for that in the last 2 years. As a matter of fact, I've worked hard to make sure that we, instead of, and actually it's not SROs, it's CSOs that have actually been, that we moved over to general funds. So that's campus safety officers are different from school resource officers. But I do want to say that there was a pushback. And for me, it was just a matter of, if we're going to spend $2.4 million on SROs that are funded by the cities, then I want to make sure we take at least half of that and fund preventative measures as well. So maybe the presence of those SROs, while they're needed for emergencies, are not necessarily needed to address the challenges that come up when we're not giving the adequate resources for mental health and wraparound services. And so if you go back and if you look at the record, I've actually been a voice for that on the school district. And it's not something I say I will do, I've done it.
Yes, we need more SEL and mental health support.
Oh, so yes, I would support more SEL support. I think it's also, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think there's been a conversation around having the local communities and the local cities fund some of the SROs, so I would accelerate that. So it doesn't have to be one or the other, but absolutely I would support additional social-emotional learning support.
So to clarify, the budget is still covering the SROs. So can we really quick, thumbs up or down? Would you be willing to defund that to put more resources into social-emotional health? Thank you.
I'm a psychologist.
In recent years, a recurring issue in public education within the WCCUSD is teacher retention. Do you see professional development as a potential solution to this problem? If so, then what constitutes it, especially with regards to introducing cultural competency in the classroom?
So for the last 4 years, I've been supporting new teachers in this district. And just for everybody's information, we lose, for the last couple years, we lost about 400 new teachers in 1 year. 400. Last year I was supporting 16 teachers, all 16 stayed. What they need is not so much professional development that happens at a certain point. They need coaching that's available every day and support, and that's the way I implement the support I give to the new teachers that I mentor. And let me just say this, like I said, last year I mentored 16, all 16 stayed. This year I'm mentoring 14, and even with the pay increase, 2 left after 2 weeks. That tells you the degree of difficulty of this job. Money can't make you stay.
There's a lot to keeping teachers more, and we've raised the salary, but there's a lot more to it. We have to give teachers a purpose, a sense of purpose in their school of what they are doing as a group together. Teachers need agency. They need to be part of the decision-making in the school. They need to be able to choose some of the teaching methods, and they need to have time to work with other teachers, to collaborate and talk about what's working and what's not working. So I think teachers want to be part of something that's really making a difference. We should be rewarding teachers when they get to certain competencies, and we should have clear recognition at schools for what teachers do throughout the school year. So there's a lot that can come from the school. It could be like a family that supports the teacher if it operates this way.
So statistically, 50% of new teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years. And there are a variety of reasons for which teachers leave. One being a feeling of isolation, feeling very alone in the job, even with a classroom full of students, and not feeling supported, not having an opportunity to collaborate with other teachers, not feeling empowered, and not feeling heard or represented. So those are all things that we need to work on to raise teacher retention, giving teachers an opportunity to collaborate, new teachers to collaborate with experienced teachers and with other new teachers, and so they don't feel so alone and isolated in the process, empowering them to succeed, providing support systems for them. And it's time for me to stop.
So I think there's research that demonstrates a couple of things make a difference. One is to have a really strong site leader that's empowering and finding ways for teachers to be able to not only develop their practice, but feel supported as they do it. Second is, if you understand our district, you'll know that there's pretty much half and half. There's mostly teachers who are 7 years and younger in our system, and then a whole set of teachers that have been here for about 15, 20 years and above. There's really a missing middle. And so what happens is that depending on where you fit in that group, your needs as an educator are different. And so for us, the core set is how do we develop that set of teachers who are here, who are going to stay if they're within that 1 to 7 year period. And part of that means also making sure that we create agency for them, as board member Block said, but also recognize that it's a flat system. You don't get to be like assistant teacher, associate teacher, you're a teacher. And so we also have to reform our system and figure out how we create ladders for career pathways and success, because that doesn't exist right now for most teachers. And that's part of what the problem is as well.
I really want to echo what Tiffany and Michael were saying about coaching and about not being an island. So I had 5 coaches my first year teaching, and I know it was overwhelming at the beginning, but each one had a different strength. I was the bilingual, I was the first dual language immersion teacher at Stewart School, and I loved doing that, but it came with its own set of obstacles of starting a program at our school, and what it meant to, branch out 1 year at a time, and what it meant to really collaborate with teachers. We have a lot of meeting time that's not geared towards collaboration, and I think teachers need that time to really work with experienced teachers. If you're a teacher in your first 3 years, you need a lot of support from your administrator, from your colleagues. You need to have that coaching piece, and it needs to be ongoing, and it needs to be systemic. Like Michael was saying, we really need to have a cohort of people and somebody who's supporting you through your development as an educator. Having a salary increase is great, and it has a real impact, but we also need ongoing, constant professional development that is authentic and it's coaching based. Thank you.
Can you repeat the last part of your question, please?
Last part, correct? If so, then what constitutes it, especially with regards to introducing cultural competency in the classroom?
Yeah, I think the beginning part was around professional development. And as I said, teacher retention is a big challenge for the district. I mean, research shows that a high-quality teacher is the #1 component for successful students, and having a couple of years of not having high-quality teachers or first-year teachers really sets students down a path of academic challenges. And we have too many students that are in that boat right now across West Contra Costa. So professional development with cultural competency is absolutely something that we need to be focused on, but we also have to be thinking about the culture at the school. As a teacher, I was in different schools. In one school, there was constant principal turnover and a culture of failure. In another school, there was a stronger principal, there was a culture of success, and that made all the difference in the world. And a lot of teachers, I believe, are leaving because if you're working in an environment that has a culture of failure, that's accepted that, you're looking to improve because you want to serve the students and you want to have those light bulb moments go off. So I think we have to work with staff and principals to also change the culture at the school, as well as professional development.
So the issue of teacher retention came to me personally 2 school years ago. I was at a school board meeting, and a huge group of Richmond High School students came because they were in an AP World History class, and they had sub after sub after sub. And this was an AP class, and they weren't getting the education that they needed. That was at Richmond High School. Last school year at Kennedy High School, there was an AP US History class, and my fiance had to step in as a sub for that course. So these were students that should have been taking an AP course, but because their teacher decided to leave, they didn't have a teacher in place. So when I look at the teacher retention issue, I see it as we need to start screening who we're hiring. With this teacher pay increase, we can now afford to bring in high quality teachers. So every single time that we sit down with the teacher and say, hey, do you want to teach at this school? We want to make sure they're going to be committed, that they look like how our students look like, and they're willing to work with our students in all of their needs. 10 seconds left. I've sat down with the human resources guy at the district, and I've seen the way that he interviews teachers, and there are ways that we can improve this system if we really want to have great quality teachers in our schools.
Okay, really quick, just an announcement. If the community has any questions, if you guys can just bring them up to Raquel, so we can just make sure that we allocate the right amount of time so everybody can get a chance to ask their question. Okay, so for the next one is due to the 15 teacher salary increase, we know that there's going to be a need for budget cuts. Where would you make these budget cuts, and what programs would you prioritize so they don't receive these cuts?
I would look at the programs that are furthest away from the classroom and make cuts in those areas. So for example, I would look at district office administrators. I would look at the people, we actually, I've been told, have kind of more office assistants in the district office than we need. We need to reduce that. We have far too many contracts with outside agencies doing things that we should be able to do ourselves, at least after watching them do it for 5 years. So I would definitely want to think about the teacher and the classroom as untouchable for budget cuts. We need to add to our classrooms and to our teaching and learning, not ever take away from it. So it's going to be hard, but we have to make our budget cuts, and we will. We have a very determined board not to go bankrupt.
I would like to see us take a look at how we can employ things that don't cost money. So in the interest of collaborating and engaging the entire community, I'd like us to take a look at engaging community organizations, nonprofit organizations, partnering with universities and colleges for support in the classroom, support to teachers, support for students, for after-school programs. Maybe we can look at decreasing our spending once we have these partnerships in place. And I realize that reductions, the cuts are going to have to come from somewhere. But I agree that they should come as far away from the classroom as possible, that our students should not suffer because cuts need to be made.
So we have to make about 14 million in cuts. And as you know, I think one of the first places would be if I could convince all 5 of those cities to cover SROs, that would be 2.4 going to the budget cuts right there, 2.4 million. We'd only have 12 million to go to. On top of that, I think pushing, again, cuts away from the classroom are very important, but the reality is that the community, you all have told us, teachers, what happens in the classroom is important. So we're moving money from any other place we can towards shoring up what's happening in the classroom. And there are a set of contracts that I think we can look at, but there's been a whole set of cuts to those contracts already, so we're going to have to find new ones. There's also a set of attrition of positions that we will choose not to fill as a result of this, and that's another way to save money. And lastly, we're a community that believes in organized labor and collective bargaining, and that's how we raise quality of life around here. And so we're going to have to partner, because every time we say we're going to cut something, like a secretary or this and that, that's a community member. So we have to, again, decide, if you believe this, vote for Val.
I strongly believe that anything that we cut should really be as far away from each classroom as we can. I don't believe that we need to cut on anything already. We spend $22 on consumable goods like pencils, paper for each of our kids per year. That's nothing. You know, teachers have to pay for these things. So if you cut things in the classroom, you're going to have teachers that are going to supplement. So is there really going to have been a raise in essence? We need to make sure that we're cutting down waste and we do an assessment of where we're spending money without a purpose. So if we are outsourcing services for trainings, if we're having consultants coming in to teach us how to use a new program or software, we need to figure out how to train our own leaders and teach, have our own teacher leaders, helping us understand new software, not having to have a consultant on retainer that we never see in the classroom, we never see at our sites, and we're just spending that money frivolously. So we need to figure out how to cut those services and make an assessment of where waste is going and where we can get those funds back in our classrooms. Thank you.
So I would look at what I call return on instructional investment. Every time that the district is spending money, we should be seeing an increase in instruction and in academic success for all students. So I would look at how are we spending money and are we getting that instructional investment back? If we're not, then that's the primary area to cut. I agree that we should be cutting, things that are not impacting the classroom, and that return on instructional investment is a great way to look at it. I'd also ask the current board members, knowing that we were having a pay increase and having cuts, what was the plan going in? I would like to say that if I was a board member at the time, I would have worked with union, other leaders to really think about how are we going to pay for this in the long term as we're committing to paying teachers more. I believe we should be paying teachers more, but fiscally responsibly, we should have had that plan going in as we approved the contract.
So before we even start making any cuts, I think that we should evaluate the way that we're funding the district right now. So as I mentioned, my fiance is a teacher at Kennedy High School, and she's a digital arts teacher, so everything she does is on the computer. But every single year, they allocate the same amount of money for paper. Like, she has reams and reams of paper in her classroom, and she opened the closet and showed me, and I said, where'd all this come from? She said that the district already paid for it. So she doesn't need this paper since everything's on the computer, but it's automatically paid for. So I think we need to start looking at the whole system. What are we funding that doesn't need to be funded? And are we automatically funding things from last year? Because that system shouldn't work. The way it should work is that we should do a needs assessment. Put the money where it needs to go first, and then everything else comes secondary. So to me, the money should go towards the classroom and the students and after-school programs. Right now, we don't have a lot of organizations working in our schools because you have to pay insurance. And I know this because I'm one of those organizations. We need to have insurance that covers over $1 million. So if you want to have more organizations coming into our schools, the district should waive this or should cover that. I knew a guy that wanted to do a barber program at Kennedy and Richmond High School, but he didn't have the money to start this, so the students were deprived of this service that they could have been doing after school.
Let me first piggyback on what Patricio just said, return on instructional investment. When I would work with the districts that I work with around the state of California, around changing student outcomes, invariably people would say, well, we have to cut as far away from the classroom as possible. And our response every time was, why are you having any activity that doesn't impact the classroom? So what he's saying and what I'm agreeing with is it starts with an instructional plan that is coherent, builds equity, and then everything is essential but is prioritized starting from the classroom. But anything that doesn't impact the classroom or marginally impacts it, you eliminate it. You don't cut it, you eliminate it because you have one business, student achievement. And when you do that correctly, you stop the hemorrhage of people leaving the district, stop the hemorrhage of students being suspended and expelled, and your revenue also goes up.
I came from a country, a third world country, Pakistan, and I saw a lot of lack of resources in high school with children with special needs, especially children with disability. As a child with a disability of my own, I experienced the lack of support from the teachers, and I felt like I left behind in my academic classes. So based on recent SBAC scores presented last week, we have seen African American students with disabilities and English learners fall more behind. What resources would you implement to support these students?
That's a great question, and it's an issue that's very concerning for me. What I'd like to see is more money put into, as part of the teacher development and training programs, something that was mentioned earlier, training around cultural competencies, learning how to communicate with students from backgrounds that are different from that of the teacher. Implicit bias training that helps teachers better understand what their own implicit biases are and be more empathetic to students and the issues that they're dealing with and the communities that they come from. And training around working with students with a variety of kinds of special needs, because we have a large number of students with special needs in our district right now, and from physical disabilities to learning disabilities to attention deficit disorders. So teachers really need to be trained around that. And the training does not take a tremendous amount of time or money.
So I think anything that anybody says, you need to understand it's going to cost money to do it. And every board meeting, I get reminded just how much we don't have money. And so it means that every choice we make has to be clear, have a strategy, but be unabashed and unapologetic and say, here's a set of students in our district that we will give more to, because we know they need more resources to succeed. And it's not just because I'm saying it, research has indicated, data's telling us we need more. That's about public will in our district. Are we willing to say and be okay when we give 4, maybe 2 teachers and 2 resource specialists for every classroom at a school like Stige? Or is the rest of the district going to say, that's okay, we know why? Or are we going to hear, well, what about mine? And that's what the problem is, and that's the kind of voice I've been bringing the last 4 years to the district, is to be razor clear and sharp about where we need to make those choices, and recognize that it's time to vote for Val.
As an undocumented immigrant when I was growing up here, and as somebody who had a lot of obstacles accessing education and getting low CST scores, I remember feeling really burdened to like not bother my teachers and feeling like I just needed to close in and figure out stuff myself, like why I wasn't getting the answers. As a teacher now, I recognize that there's so many students with a lot of very specific needs early on in education, and there's not enough programs to address those needs. And a lot of students are fully immersed in general education classes with IEPs, with SSDs, with 504 plans, and there's no supports built into that. So a general education classroom teacher has to provide services for up to 33 students if you're a 4th or 5th grade teacher, figure out what they need, differentiate, and still be able to make sure that they reach their fullest potential at the SBAC testing. So what we need to do is really focus on programs that work, expand DLI programs responsibly and with a clear plan, and really look into getting aids to really support our students from mothers and parents who are already volunteering, training them and getting them prepared to help in our classrooms even more. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're a district that has, I mean, when you look at the statistics, it is troubling. 30% of 3rd graders are reading on grade level. That means 70% of 3rd graders are not reading on grade level. That is a recipe for academic failure. 90% of African American students are not proficient in math in 6th grade. 90%. So that's what we have to focus. We have huge equity issues in the district, and we need to have strong research-based interventions once we identify students that are struggling, to catch them up and keep them up throughout the district. We need a good, coherent instructional plan that goes from kindergarten all the way through, and we need to intervene as early as possible. So we have to flip the 70%. We should be ashamed that there's 70% of students reading. We want 100. We're at 30. So that's what we have to focus on, because once you get everyone reading at 3rd grade, then you use those reading skills to learn to be successful across all academic subject matters.
So, growing up as a brown 1st generation student, I remember 4th grade. 4th grade was when I stopped asking my parents for help with my homework, because that was as far as their education got. My dad, he had trouble finishing middle school. My mom only got up to her high school diploma, and so, coming from that perspective, from the student perspective, what I see is what we need is supports for our students. A lot of people that don't go to schools in this area, they think that our black and brown students are dumb, but it's not that we're dumb, it's just that we don't have enough supports at home. So what I've been proposing is that in kindergarten and in 1st grade, as soon as the student starts falling behind, we give them tutoring right away. I don't know why, but the 3rd grade is the statistic that we use, but we should be looking at kindergarten and 1st grade. Why are they dropping there? In middle school and high school, we need to have after-school tutoring. The question was, how are we supposed to fund all this? I met a lot of people who want to volunteer in our schools and provide after-school tutoring. But again, because you have to have that insurance, or because the district doesn't have a hotline where you can say, hey, I'm willing to tutor, where do I go? We're not supporting programs like that.
Interestingly enough, I opened with the quote that's on this paper. I didn't know it was on the paper, that education is a weapon. When you look at the subgroups that were just mentioned, disabled, English language learners, African American, you can see that that weapon has been turned on people who don't have the weaponry to fight back. Therefore, what we need is, as Patricio said, is a coherent system. We understand that the system is incoherent and is not working really for anybody, but it appears to be working for some only because they're working hard for their own kids. But the system is totally broken, totally incoherent. Here's the evidence. We have already purchased a reading intervention program to help kids to be successful. We implement it in either the 9th grade or the 6th. It's supposed to be implemented in 3rd or 4th. And so obviously we are incoherent in our administration of education.
I think the program you're referring to is V180, which is actually not meant to be a generally used program in middle and high schools. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We're not doing much for the kids who are behind, so the first thing we have to do is to start providing the help. When teachers have behind, they don't know what to do. What do? They might not know about student study teams, which is a place where you could go and talk about children who are having difficulty. They might not know if they have children with special needs, how they should teach them differently, and no one ever comes by to let them know. You know, I just love to hear Stephanie, because she's a teacher. You could tell she knows what it's like. And I was in schools a lot of time in schools. And we have people who have been in school reform. It's not a matter of not having the expertise. We've got to have the will to do it.
Thank you. Now we have some community questions that we've collected, and we have a community question from the Latina Center, which is, we know that there are student representatives on the board, right? But what would be the ideal process of how those students get elected?
The ideal way for the students to be elected, first is to open it up for students who are interested to have an opportunity to be a part of the application system and give their voice. Personally, I would like to engage every student who wanted to be a part of it. I think it would be a great opportunity, and I think we have to maybe look at a way to develop how we get more student voices heard. But really, students that are willing to commit the time, engage, who are willing to speak not only for themselves, but for their student community, I think it needs to be an essential part of the process. I think students who are willing to listen and be open to ideas and to engage in conversation and communication, those all have to be factors, I think, in the process.
So I would love to just have an election and let students run for the position of where we are, because it's a democratic process. Our system, though, keep in mind, it's been, we have to keep reminding how we're building in structural ways for students to have a voice. When I got on this board, there wasn't student representatives anymore, and that's something we've instituted again in the last 4 years. When Mr. Thurman was on the board, he helped create the Youth Commission that became another mechanism of advisement. Right now, that's where we get student trustees, is you have to participate in the Youth Commission. But even then, it's hard to get students to be engaged. So there's got to be other mechanisms for how we make it possible for students to want to be part of the process. But ultimately, I think it would be good to have an election and let students campaign for the position, because then if they're there and they win, you know they really wanted it. Just like all of us here campaigning right now, we really want it. Vote for Val. Thanks.
I definitely want to echo what Tiffany was saying about having students who want to be involved in it be, given the supports to do it. I also believe that it starts early. We don't have student councils. We don't have student governments at our schools, at elementary schools. So how can we really engage them civically early on when we don't have these supports? We have them at high schools, but we don't have any of that. At our school, we have No Place for Hate, and it's put together by I was one of the co-chairs 2 years ago, and the other teacher, she's also a full-time teacher. She's also leading the school climate committee for parent stakeholders, for teacher stakeholders, and for kids. So she's stretched out thin. When I was doing it, I was also doing the SST. I was the chairperson on my side for the student success team, and I'm doing that this year full on. So I'm focusing on that. But we need to have programs for kids early on. Student government, mock trial. We need to have these kind of leader people engagement. Civic engagements early on so that they get invested and they see, okay, my voice does matter. It's not just about, one person dictating to everybody. It's about everybody having a say in it and getting together to really have something happen at our site. and then represent us at the board too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think having more consistent student voice is huge, not only for the community, for students, but also for the board to understand that perspective that I think too often is not represented. And I see students at the board when we're considering closing a school, and then they come out full force, but we need to have engagement around all the issues. I agree that I'd like to see an election. That would be great, to make sure that students have the time to be able to do that and to campaign across different schools. I think that would be exciting. I'd also like to work with different community groups, like I said before, the PTAs, SFERs, the Parents Council. There's a lot of power in these groups that are organizing throughout the community. Anthony's group, and I think getting those groups involved in order to harness the student voice and get the word out, because I feel like if we have an election tomorrow, the district would handle the communication and no one would run. So I think we would have to make sure that we're engaging with the community in a way that we get the word out, and we're working across all of the different groups throughout the district.
I like this question. Student civic engagement is my career. It's what I do. I don't know how many of y'all go to the school board meetings, but when you go and you see the student trustees, they're off to the side, and they only speak when the board members say, "Students, any comments?" What I see is trophies. You know, that's all they are. They just make us feel good that they're there. What I think that we need to do is re-implement student government in our high schools. I can tell you, they're non-existent. And a lot of people say, well, they're just students, they have a lot on their plate, they're not really interested in this stuff. I have 10th graders working on prostitution on 23rd Street, around that issue. I have 11th graders working on reforming Prop 13 to better fund our schools. Like, the students, they're willing. They just need somebody to say, hey, here's the opportunity, let me support you. Right now, our district does a very poor job of supporting student leadership, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to run, is because I want to show students that, like, hey, in a few years, you can be up here too. You can be a candidate up here as well, and I'm very proud of the work that I do.
First thing I would suggest is that you review the tape and consider what Ms. Hernandez-Jarvis said. Because she said it quickly, review that tape. We have to embed within our core instruction opportunities for students to learn about things that are relevant to their life. One of the reasons, not the major reason, but one of the reasons our students have difficulty with learning to read is that the reading that they're given doesn't relate to any problem solving. So we have to embed that whole process in, and then leaders will emerge. And they may emerge in official capacities or unofficial capacities, but certainly there'll be a desire amongst people who have been trained and educated in reform and change, and they need to be, it needs to be implemented at the earliest ages and throughout high school.
Well, I was just shocked to hear we don't have student council, because I've worked in a lot of districts and I've never heard that before. So we have to give students more choice and decision-making power, so that being on the board is just a continuation of that for some of our students. I've learned incredibly important things from the students who we have had, but sometimes they think it would be nice to have students maybe who aren't doing as well at school, or we need to get more diversity, and we want people to tell it like it is. I'm in favor of having an addition, 3 or 4 student board members, and as I say, including the students in the decisions, even about how to decide on a student board member. But first, they need to be educated about how much power they can have in this position. They really can turn the vote. They can, we need to make decisions based on what our consumers, the students, say to us.
Thank you. We have another bonus question from the students, from our SFER students, where we know that we've been working along with the SNAT team, Healthy Richmond, the Rice Center, Latina Center, of other organizations to have some recommendations, right, around a positive school climate, which is our main campaign. Now, we have recommended that the funds, right, from the CSOs to be for more social and emotional trainings specifically for campus security officers. Now, since then, that has not happened. And there has been no trainings. And they told us that it was too late to have those trainings. So, if elected, when will you start those social emotional trainings for campus security officers?
So one of the things I want to say is that just getting a commitment to have those trainings is progress, because we didn't even have that before. And I think part of what the difficulties in trying to create change and address a sense of urgency is the way schools operate. Schools operate in yearly calendars where you're planning out and you're doing budgets 3 years in advance. But part of it means an intention. So what we need to do, those of us who are on the board, is actually make sure that when the training for HR happens and is being planned for the coming year, that training is in fact one of the trainings that will take place. But it has to be planned in advance. And oftentimes what happens is systems won't meet their intention, because what they'll do is then they'll let those opportunities to do the planning to make sure it's going to happen 6 years from now come and go. And then the time comes and it's like, oh, we didn't plan, we don't have time, and it doesn't happen. So I think that's part of what our responsibility is, but that's what the challenge is that my role is to make sure I work with the one direct report I have, which is the superintendent. I technically cannot go tell Mr. Whittemore, you must make this happen, because my direct report is superintendent. But I can utilize that power of that relationship to make sure it happens. And I will make a campaign promise right now, tonight, that if elected, I will make sure that that happens for the next year's training.
So I teach, and what we do at the beginning of the year is look at the standards, look at the curriculum guides that we have, the district-facing guides, and plan backwards. So we see where we want to be and how we're going to do that and walk our students through that each month. So we have to look right now how much time we have left in the year, how much change we want to make, and if we want to commit to that. So if we want to have these trainings done, we need to collect data on who can be trained, when they can be trained, and which side, and who's going to do the training. So by having that data, we can say in a month we're going to have this going, in 2 months we're going to have this implemented, in 3 months we're going to collect information from staff that was trained, in 4 months we're going to ask more information from them and engage the parents and see if any changes have been made. So we need to have a clear plan, and I think that's what's lacking. We may pass things, we may do things, but we don't have a plan with a timeline. And if you teach and you do that, your kids are not going to learn. You're going to have no way of doing formative assessments or where they're at. So we need to do a plan, and I would say that within the first month of having a new board, we need to get that done and have clear plans for things that have been recently passed. Thank you.
So in regards to the training of the CSO, right, that's the answer around the question is, I think we could start immediately. I think as a board member, I would say the answer is as soon as possible, immediately. We don't have to wait until next year. I think it's great to have it in the plan for next year, and it's great to have it in the plan for future years, but there's things that we could do with the CSOs right away. We could be engaging them with content, we could be engaging them throughout the day, we could pull them out and have some trainings. Maybe we can't spend that quickly on the full, but we can definitely use the trainings in the immediate. So I definitely support this. The board has supported it, but there has been no implementation or action around it. That's what I would bring to the position.
Thank you.
So, similar to Raquel, I also sit on the SNAT team, the Schools and Neighborhood Action Team. And when did we have that event? Was that in March? Yeah, like in March, we had this event, and the board and the superintendent committed to doing this, to providing these trainings. Nothing's happened. All of a sudden, 2 weeks before Election Day, that's when we finally get our commitment that this training is going to happen. That's not good enough. Like Patricio says, we need to start this now. Do you know who trains the CSOs? The police department. Do you know who offered to train the CSOs for free? Catholic Charities. Was that offer accepted? No. These CSOs are still not trained. If you walk into Richmond High School tomorrow, what you're going to see is 3 CSOs sitting right there at the front of the school just chatting it up. That's it. During lunchtime, what you see is they have a bullhorn. Hey, get to class, the bell ring, get to class. What is this? It feels like a prison. I've actually had some of our elementary students, a 5th grader, a 10-year-old, tell me that he feels like he's in prison at school because as soon as the bell rings, everybody has to take a knee. Who is training these people? Who's allowing these people to be in our schools? The answer is nobody's training them. And we have a strong commitment now, and I'm willing to make that commitment, and I have made that commitment in the past.
Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until you get hit in the mouth. This is the reality. We're being hit in the mouth. When 70% of our kids graduate and they're not at grade level, you've been hit in the mouth. I don't understand paying somebody and they don't do what you tell them to do. I just don't understand that. So we have to get out of that habit as a district that things are optional. I remember I had a 5th grade teacher in this district tell me, who was a friend of mine, well, I should be able to teach what I want to. I said, well, yeah, if you're going to teach them all 12 years and then employ them after those 12 years. I said, where else can you get a job where you get to do what you want to do? This is ridiculous. It needs to happen immediately. When I would go into districts for change, what we would tell them is, take that plan, which isn't working, and let's build a new one immediately today that will.
The board needs a commitment from the superintendent with a timeline about when and how this is going to happen. We evaluate the superintendent, and I did not give him great marks last time, I'm going to tell you that. But he did pass because there were others on the board who were very positive. So this is holding the superintendent accountable to his goals is the one way that we can really make sure he does what he says he's going to do. This training should have happened. I bet the principals at the high schools don't even know that. The communication, I just don't understand why it can't improve more rapidly. So we have we do have the punch in the mouth and the nose. But we have a lot that we have to do. I just wish we didn't have the people employed at all.
I think that CSOs and SROs are a critical part of school safety, but they are not. They can't if they're not in a positive part of the community, then it's all for naught. So we have to figure out ways to, in addition to planned and funded training, engaging the SROs into our community. We have a lot of problems with law enforcement in general and this relationship to communities of color in this country right now. And we need to change, we have an opportunity to help change the narrative for people in our community. And we can do that through engaging our SROs, and we can work on ways to do that. I talk a lot about having town hall meetings and small group forums. This is inviting them to come in. This is not requiring, not demanding, but trying to engage them in a different kind of way, and I think it's possible.
Thank you. Is that all the candidates? So now we have some questions from the audience. As you may know, the public schools in the West Contra Costa do not have English as their first language. How are you planning to receive better and more, to support more opportunities, to provide more support for students who do not speak English as their first language, and support for them to attend college?
I teach dual language immersion in Spanish. So I teach in Spanish, and I was the first Latina teacher at my school, I don't know in how many years. And what we do is have programs that really nurture the students' first language. So I have a lot of students that come in speaking Spanish, but they don't know how to read it, and so they become literate over the years. The students who do know how to read it, or not know how to read it, who speak English, they just learn another language too. So it's really a win-win for the students involved, for all of them. For ELLs, as an ELL myself, I really benefited from having teachers who were culturally competent and who were bilingual. So I think that we need to do more to support and to acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of teachers who have B class and who are not using it in the classroom. We need to expand dual language immersion programs responsibly by having master plans that say, you know, how we're going to implement them, if it's going to be 90-10 or 50-50 and at which sites, depending on the populations that need them. So we need to have the support for our students. And we also need to have early access to, you know, college campuses and career fairs and field trips for our younger students. Thank you.
Yes.
support for our English language learners. We have a lot of different languages that are spoken throughout the district, but we need better instruction. I mean, 70% of English language learners are not reclassified by 6th grade. So now they're in this cycle of always being in ESL and not supported. I came to this country not speaking any English at all, and thanks to good instruction and good support systems, I was able to learn to read, I was able to learn English and be successful academically. We need to do that for all of our students across West Contra Costa. We're not doing that today, and we need to really focus on the supports for our English language learners to reclassify. That will also save a lot of money because it costs less money to once you reclassify students. And then I agree that we should expand our dual language programs. My 2 daughters are in dual language program in Washington Elementary. We transferred from El Cerrito to go to school in Richmond for the dual language program. And if they, the district data shows dual language students do better overall if you have a strong program.
Yeah, so the dual language immersion program is a great asset that this district has, but I don't think that just a few should have that privilege. You know, it's great that your child, you know, I commend you all for making that move, but I want to expand programs like that to the whole district so that way every parent has the opportunity to send their kids to these programs. When it comes to our EL students, the district was discussing this 2 board meetings ago. So immediately what I did was I started talking to the teachers. Hey, what is it like in the classroom? I started talking to students. I actually work with EL students. And right now the biggest problem is supports. Right now a lot of our EL students are being put with teachers that only speak English and they can't communicate with the students at all. So we need to make sure that we have grad tutors in the classroom with these teachers who are able to bridge that gap, especially for our first stage EL students. Another thing is that we have really, really high standards for our EL students, like really high standards. One of the teachers told me if we could just lower the standards a little bit, these students would still be very fluent in English and be able to reclassify and go on to general education courses quicker.
So you've heard Patricio say a couple of times about 3rd grade and 6th grade. That's very intentional. The reality is that students, the vast majority who stop attending high school, make that decision in 3rd grade. By 6th grade, they get serious about it, and the largest percentage drop out or leave in the 9th grade. The reality is we have to build much stronger language programs, not only for those that are English language learners, but also for those who have a need for academic language development, and it has to be done TK to 3rd grade so that we stop the psychological leave from school as soon as we possibly can. Otherwise, people are in classrooms, but they're not accessing the material.
I think it took a long time for the school district to realize that they had a large Latino population. I really do. And I don't think that it's set up now to really help with the second language. I've never been in a district that doesn't have a cabinet level EL supporter who makes sure that all those programs are done correctly in the schools. We need more support in the schools. We need to put more of our funds. We get a lot of EL funds, and our reclassification has to be changed. It's more challenging than it needs to be. So it keeps, in effect, it keeps kids out of the more challenging classes, and that's not fair to them. So there's so much that needs to be changed, and we need to start immediately by making sure that kids are supported when they start school.
So one of the things I've been saying since the start of my campaign is that I believe in educational equity for all students. And in terms of English language learners, I think we have to have more than one model. Not one single model fits every single student. And so I like the idea of the dual language programs, but that's not practical for all students. I'd like to see there be the option of dual language programs at all school sites, and that's a long-term goal. That would be a great option. But I also would like to see an opt-in to that program so that it's not a mandated program for all students, but it's an opt-in program that's available to all students. I'd like to also see the option of language, a second language early in education. In our K through 6 education, I'd really like to see the option of students learning a second language. When I was in kindergarten, I got the option to take a second language, and I did. My parents put me in, and it changed the way I looked at learning other languages throughout my life and my willingness to be a part of communities that were other than my own. I think it expands the learning on many levels.
So 4 years ago, the first thing I noticed when I got to the school district is that it had an identity crisis. Didn't want to recognize who's in our schools today. Not who was in it in 1968, not who was in it in 1978, not who was in it in 1988, not who was in it in 2008. Who's in it in 2018? 2018, 54%, 52% Latino students, 10,000 English learners, and not all of them speak Spanish. There are lots of newcomers from across the globe, and they need to have their English language needs met as well. And so for me, part of that meant is building an infrastructure the last 4 years, and I've been working on that for a number of years. And Board Member Block is right. We didn't have a cabinet level position to lead this for the district. So when people say there's no coherency, that's not by mistake. There was nobody there to do it. And so that's why we've been building and think that that's important. So I want to leave you with this. Don't just vote for Val. Vote for 2 other people that are going to help us recognize who's in our schools today and what are the supports that they need to be successful. And be unapologetic about it, because again, we have the urgency, we have the energy, but I need 2 other votes to be able to do that.
Thank you. So another question from the community. What do you think about the grades that the students are receiving? Does that define the student of how they do in school? Or do you think students have different ways of learning and understanding the subjects?
So grades are a reflection of the system right now. So who's giving the grades? The teacher. Who's providing the instruction? The teacher. Really, the grades are a reflection of the system. Are grades the only way that students are demonstrating learning? Absolutely not. Is the standardized test scores aspect the only way? Absolutely not. So we definitely have to be looking at data from a lot of different perspectives and look at the whole child when we do an evaluation. And I think grades, in the scenario that we're in right now, where 70% of students are not reading at 3rd grade, obviously it's not just fancy that happens in 3rd grade, it starts happening in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and continues, then they're set up to not have good grades. If you're going into 4th grade and not reading, if you're going to 5th grade, you're not accessing social studies, not accessing science, you're not even accessing math because you have to read the word problem. So no, I don't think grades are, I think any issues around the grade is a symptom. It's not really the cause. And I think we need to really focus on instruction and changing that and helping students learn to read at a much younger age.
The short answer is no. I don't think grades are the way that we should measure success for our students, because that's not how success is measured in the real world that we are all now living in. Right now, success is measured by, can you afford rent? Can you afford food? Can you afford the basic necessities of life? So I think that the type of model that we should be using in our schools is the same model that Chicago Unified is using right now. So right now, if you want to graduate from a school in Chicago Unified, you need to have one of 4 things. You need to either have a trade school lined up, a college acceptance letter, a plan to go to the military, or a job lined up. You need to have some sort of plan after school. And I think that's the same thing that we should be doing here, because it doesn't matter if you have straight A's in this district, because if you're not if we didn't set you up for a bright future afterwards, what does that mean? And it doesn't matter if it says that you have nothing but F's on your report card, what if you're really good at welding or something like that? So we need to make sure that we're looking at student success in terms of what they're going to be doing after high school. That's what we should be leading towards.
First of all, grades are silly. Think about what Patricio just said. The person who gives you the grade is the person who gave you the instruction. The grade they give you is really their grade. Here's another reality. I have 4 children. 2 of my sons went to Ivy League level schools, Ivy League schools. Harvard as one and Brown the other. When you ask, as an outsider, Harvard University, what grade somebody got, they tell you to get out their face. You can't get the grade. It's personal. And because it's not, their education is not based on some arbitrary letter. It's based on what is your level of performance. So yes, students learn in different ways. Think about it like this as well. The person who started FedEx turned that project in college. He got a C. He was so self-confident, he said, this school is obviously not smart enough for me. And he dropped out and went to work on creating FedEx. Yet we need a lot of different ways to measure student success according to standards that set them up for success after school.
First graders should never get a paperback with an F on it. We should never use letter grades in elementary schools. This is really behind the times if we're still doing it, are we? Good. So I think we need to think more in terms of rubrics, which is also what they do in Chicago. I know one of the people there, they are doing a really good job, but it's not like end of semester, you didn't learn it, you'll never get another chance. By doing the rating rubrics, students know exactly the skill they need to do in order to demonstrate competence. And if they don't get it because of 2 skills, they are told that and given another opportunity. So I'm not a big proponent of grades. I do know they're necessary in high school, but often I think, I talk to people who think their grades were inflated and they were getting A's and then they got to college and they weren't ready. And I've heard that from SFER students, so I know it's true.
So I'm going to tell a quick story from my grad admissions days. And then if I have time, I'll give you some tips for you aspiring grad students. When I was working in admissions, I got a call around the time that we sent out admissions letters from someone who did not get in, and he was angry. And he told me about his 3.9 GPA from his very reputable undergraduate institution, and his 800 GMAT score, graduate management admissions test, and what a fantastic, I knew exactly who he was. He put absolutely no effort into his application whatsoever because he thought his grades and his test scores were going to get him into grad school, whatever grad school he wanted to. And he did get into Harvard. He just didn't get into Berkeley. But what I'm saying is grades are not everything. And right now I agree that grades at elementary school level are very detrimental to a lot of students because grades don't define you, but it does impact your self-esteem, your sense of self, your confidence, and that impacts the way students perform from there on. Students that are labeled gifted early, and I'm supposed to stop now, but I just have to say that students who are labeled gifted early have a confidence level that carries them forward. Unfortunately, sometimes the curriculum doesn't match up to meet their confidence level, and then they become the students that drop out or get distracted and they become labeled a problem. We'll punch you in the mouth.
Vote for Tiffany. I'm going to be serious though. So I do have a policy background in ed, and I've spent a lot of time when I worked as an Ed Trust West executive director going across the nation and the state looking at best practices and doing how communities work together. And this was one of the key questions they asked, which is how do you really measure what a student's readiness and capacity is to demonstrate they've acquired a mastery of a skill set that's going to help you move on? Is it a letter grade? Is it a capstone project of a couple of different project-based tasks that you show? What is it? To be quite frank, we're not good at any of it because in the end we haven't decided what are the key sets of skills that we then match to our curriculum that actually demonstrate and ask students to show that that's what you need to be successful in the future. So you do have students who have grade inflation. They are the valedictorians of West Contra Costa Unified, and they go to Berkeley and they're wondering why they're not prepared and why they are struggling. And that's the challenge that we have. If we need to just get back to the notion of having parents and students and teachers and our whole systems understand what are the skill sets that I need to have and everybody knows it, so that we know when we're out of alignment of a performance and awareness of a student performing, then we can work collectively as a community to get people the resources and supports they need to acquire that. Because we do have things like you can get a high school diploma and it means nothing. And that's how we shortchanged our millennials and the current generation.
So just so everyone knows, in elementary school now, we use E for excellent, N for needs improvement, and S for satisfactory. And with each remark, we have to put what our students need to work on. So it's not that we're saying, oh no, you failed. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I accumulated 55 hours of detention, right? I only served a bit, but I served them and I felt horrible for myself. So what Tiffany was saying about self-esteem, it does start early on. So if we're giving, negative grades, our kids are going to feel that. I don't believe that we need to just have report cards. I believe that we can use them as a way to communicate with parents and say, you can help your child in this area. You can help them writing their numbers 1 through 30. This is something to focus on between now and the end of this month. And it's a way to communicate where we can help our kids very specifically, but it shouldn't be the only way. We need to have portfolios. We need to show that we're doing project-based learning that actually shows the progress of students. Do they understand critical thinking? Do they understand how to get things done in a group setting? Do they know how to solve things on their own? If we can prove that and show that, and it's formative, it's progress that's monitored over a period of time, we can serve our kids and families better. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have a question from the West Contra Costa Parent Council.
In a district that is something like chicken without head, what is your specific plan to improve academic proficiency?
So, I know we're facing budget cuts right now, but I honestly think that the first thing that we should be funding is preschools. I met a mother, and it was like noon, and she was with her 4-year-old, and I asked her, well, what are you guys doing? And she said they were going to IHOP, and then in the middle of the drive, she started crying, and she told me that her son didn't get into the preschool that they wanted to get into because it was full. And here in the district, it was full. And she tried going around and it cost too much. And she started crying because she said, I don't want my child to fail because I couldn't afford to put him in preschool when he was 4 years old. So the first thing we need to do is start them early as we can, so that by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're not part of that 70%. And then as I mentioned before, the next thing we need to do is provide intervention at kindergarten and 1st grade. Immediately, as soon as the student starts falling behind, we need to sit down with them and say, hey, what's going on? How can we re-strategize? And again, I'm just going to re-emphasize, we need to provide after-school tutoring for our middle school and our high school students. A lot of teachers are willing to do it, but we're not paying them to stay after school. And the way that we're paying our teachers right now, they're not as open to it because we're not paying them anything.
So that was exactly my job for the last 10 years before I started working in this district, is to go into districts that were failing, just like this one, and provide them with a prescription that is literally on the California Department of Education website, where the district looks at itself through the lens of what have other districts that are similar, what have they done to improve? And here's the evidence of how that works. In 2002, only 9% of children in America were proficient at graduation. We were among the least educated countries on earth in 2002. That was a problem. It was a civil rights problem. It was a national defense problem. It was a quality of life problem. This particular system began being implemented in 2002, and when it was stopped in 2012, we went from 9% to 67% nationwide. This district has never looked at itself through the lens of successful practices. That's what I would do.
I do agree with Mr. Gonzalez that the district needs to pay attention. The district feels like it's isolated. It doesn't go to other districts that are successful with the same types of students to see how they've done it. They don't do the outside trainings that most educators were doing in the 90s. So there's just so much that needs to be done. But we have to intervene early We have to have a better transition for students with special needs when they come from preschool to kindergarten. A lot of times the teachers don't even realize that they had issues and they no longer qualify. It's a big one. But intervening early and then teaching to a higher level. We're not teaching to a high enough level. I bet the high school students would agree with that for some students it just doesn't seem like it's worth it to go to school. It's not interesting and they're not learning anything. So it all comes down to teaching.
One of the things I'd really like to do, and this is a long-term goal, is to develop a pre-K through college pipeline. Right? The work can start now, and that's the concept of introducing college early, at the earliest levels of education, and partnering with organizations and with universities and with colleges to get kids excited about the idea of continuing education, get teachers excited about the potential in each of their students. Really encouraging teachers to invest in the possibilities of what these children can become someday. Not every child starts up on a level playing field, and the divide gets wider and wider as they progress through school. And oftentimes in schools, they have instruction from individuals who don't understand that fully, and that inadvertently add to the widening gap. I think some of our teacher education needs to be around that. I spoke about cultural competencies earlier and implicit biases. Teachers need to have a better understanding of the children that are in their classroom and how to teach those individual children.
So one of the things I keep saying over and over is we need to stop acting like solving this problem is an afterthought or a side thing we do in the district. We actually need to make that the core programming of the district. So a plan like you're talking about really needs to be what our instructional plan is across the district. What are the supports that are informing that? Because until we do that, we're going to keep trying to solve these problems by saying, well, that's a catch-up thing I need to do for this set of kids, or that's a program that can help solve it. And what we need to recognize is we're not being responsive to who's in our schools now and what education needs to look like for them. And I think part of the challenge that we have is making sure that we focus on the one thing that I think research tells us makes a difference still, and that is reading. Right now, you can't even do Common Core math if you don't know how to read. And then we're wondering why only 1,000 of our African American students are proficient in math. It's because we have poor English language development opportunities for both English learners and native students, native English speaking students in our district. So integrating, figuring out how to continue to do literacy instruction, offering content, because in 4th grade it switches, and you start, instead of reading to learn, instead of learning to read, you read to learn. And somebody reminded me it's time to vote for Val.
Yes, it was me. So I believe there's two things we can do. The first one is really assess what school side needs are happening now. So like what's getting in the way of learning? Because I know at our side we have a lot of issues around not having enough people to help our kids who have high trauma, who have high needs. And we send them to the office when they cannot be safe in the classroom, and that's not okay. But we have buddy teachers, but it gets in the way of their learning and of other kids' learning. So that's one issue we need to figure out. We need to collect this data from school sites. How often are kids being sent to the office? For what reasons? And actually have that, because I bet right now if I was to ask that, we couldn't say how, across all the sites what's happening and where the needs of these kids are. The second thing is to implement an actual reading program that works for everybody. We keep on switching assessments from district graded to fast bridge learning to DRA to DIBELS, and we switch it and switch it and switch it, and we cannot keep on doing this because we need to be consistent across which assessments we're testing our kids on. So we need to collect data so that we can implement a reading program and see where the needs are at our sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have another.
One more.
Oh, sorry.
So thank you for the question from the Parents Council. I'm honored to say that I was endorsed by the Parents Council, so I welcome this question. And working with districts across the country, I mean, I would focus on three things as a school board member. And we can get into details in longer time than a minute. But one is prioritize the needs of students and families across the district. I call that my North Star. in every decision. Every decision would include the question, is this best for students? Is this best for what's happening in the classroom? Number two, developing and retaining teachers. I think we're turning over too many teachers, and we're not having a culture that keeps teachers here. My daughter, 5th grade, started without a teacher last year, and you want to have a student that's really excited about school and is doing well academically. You have a really bad start of the school year, start that student off or that class with a sub. We live through that and work with the principal through that. And then lastly is we got to focus on the school culture, and I would work with staff to develop a positive school culture that's really focused on academic success and academic rigor. So that school culture that helps drive everything else.
Thank you. So we have one more question from a community member and a concerned parent.
Hi, my name is Davida Shepherd, and I have more of a concern. I just wanted to just state that I'm trying to figure out what can we do to develop a plan to help not just, Spanish-speaking students, which I agree with the ESL support, because I support that. But not just only ESL, we need a diversity with ESL training from, I want to say, teachers to tutoring services, because I'm here from Richmond, California, and there, like you said, we have students that are at a third grade, reading third grade level, and they speak English as a first language and still need help. So my concern is trying to figure out what can we do to support not just African Americans, which I definitely would love to say, because I noticed that the school that my daughter attends, they're #1 for testing, but I asked for the data on African Americans. I wanted to see, because I'm visual, a pie chart of the percentage, which actually wasn't that bad. It was about 49%, and the Latinos were scoring about 58%, if I'm not mistaken. And that's pretty good for African Americans, I will say, but I still would like to see them go up. And I'm just trying to figure out what can we do to create some type of diverse type of help, not just ESL, because that's extra help for the students.
I wish my dad was an Andrew Gonzalez. My dad took us to Disneyland with a schedule. So I feel compelled to stay within 1 minute. And the question obviously deserves a lot more time than that. But I'll say it like this. Stephanie mentioned it earlier, that we have these social-emotional programs that need to be embedded, not placed on top, not extra, not supplemental, but embedded within the English language arts program. The last 2 weeks I've been spending time at the GRIP Center at the homeless shelter. And I can tell you with good authority and based on my own experience, we have to teach parents to re-narrate to their kids how they talk to them, so the kid talk to themselves differently. Then content acquisition is easier once I feel better about myself.
Well, I've been trying to start a program for children at birth to work on language, and there actually are programs that are being successful for that, and with all students. And in my school that really improved, we insisted that children answer questions with a full sentence. You would be surprised at what a difference that makes with language if they always use a full sentence. But you're kind of telling us some of the answer when you tell me about the pie chart up at your school that's doing so well. Kids are doing better because they're in classes where the level of teaching is probably higher. We need to make sure that we are exposing. We have children who have no language when they enter school. They don't speak Spanish, they don't speak English, they speak kind of a combination of things. We have students who are Caucasians who can't speak English. So we need to expand our teaching of English to all students. It's very basic. If you can't talk, you can't write. So there you go for written language, and reading is very hard too.
Okay, so I keep coming back to this issue of cultural competencies because I think it's important. And I think especially in early education, when we're looking at students and we're listening to our students, we have to embrace them where they are. Because they're not at fault for not knowing language. They're not at fault for not being able to read. They only know what they've been exposed to. And it's a lot to ask of our teachers, but I think it's a necessary thing to ask of our teachers, that they make the students where they are, and they make the students feel okay about where they are. And that we begin teaching with the assumption that our students don't know how to read, that they don't speak English well. All students. We begin with that assumption, and we teach them. We teach them language. We teach them slowly, we teach them progressively, and then we meet them where they are as they continue to grow. So there will be high-achieving students, there will be average students, there will be low-achieving students, but they're all deserving of a quality education.
You know, it's funny to hear you ask that question, because when I hear your question, I don't just hear you looking for an answer, I hear how much you love your children, and you really want the best for them. And how do we harness, if we all figured out that if we could take what we love and want to provide our children and make that be our driving force to meet all their needs, and be willing to do things different as a result of it. There's a whole set of things that we need to do in combination to accelerate success. The first thing, though, is we found that even, well, number one, you have to have high quality instruction, which means you have to have a highly trained, highly capable teacher force. We're working on that. If I could wave a magic wand right now and make that be in every classroom, I would do that first. Then I need to make sure that we have a set of high expectations and culture in our schools that says no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, I believe in you, and I know you have the innate gift to be brilliant. Can you imagine what schools would look like if we walked in and that's all you knew, that your child was thought that way as soon as they walked in the classroom, as soon as they walked in the door? And not only your child, but you too, and your parent? Yeah. It would make a difference. Third, we need to be well-resourced to be able to do all those things. And that means be able to address all the social emotional needs. Everybody I know saying that, but listen, at the end of the day, I'll be frank. I have a lot of respect for everybody who's running for school board right now, because we're trying to solve a problem. But the issue is going to be how we're going to do it with what we have, and how do we become advocates to get more of what we need. But if I had to make a magic wand, it would be high quality instruction matched with the firm belief that we know our kids are capable of doing amazing things. When I see the outcomes that we have, I never say it's because of kids. It's, as many people said, I've said it's a reflection of us and the system.
Yes.
The SFAC and the grades are a reflection of us. They're not a reflection of our kids.
Thank you, Val. Really appreciate it. So as a mom, I really want my daughter to go to a school where she's valued and where she's, thought that she's the best that she can be and be exposed to material that's going to really bring out her fullest potential. As a teacher, I want that for all my students too. And I believe that we do need to have high quality instruction in the classrooms happening. I also believe that we need to have, more instructors and teachers that look like the students they're teaching. And to have that buy-in and cultural competence, we need that. We need books that represent our students. Most of my books have students that are African American or Latino as the protagonists. And that makes a difference. And the kids can take those home and bring them back. And there's a trust there with the parents, and they know that that book came from the classroom. They can keep it as long as they want, and then they can bring it back. And we need libraries that allow our kids to take the books home and look at them at home. If we really want to nurture reading and lifelong learners, we need to start when they're young, and we need to have those interventions and reading engagements early on in pre-K, kindergarten, first grade. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. What's lacking here is a coherent plan for all students. We've set out the 2022 goals, and commend the superintendent for setting out lofty goals where 80% of students are going to be reading by 3rd grade. But I haven't seen any plan that tells us how to get there. How do we get there year by year, even semester by semester? You got to kind of strip that out. So if you're moving the whole system, you got to move the whole system to serve all students well. As I said before, hiring, retaining, and developing teachers is part of that because research shows that high quality teaching is the #1 factor in student success. And my daughter last year, I would say, lost a year in 5th grade because started with a substitute, then he was great, but moved a 1st grade teacher who was a 1st-year teacher to 5th grade, who was not prepared and didn't teach math until the 2nd semester. So, you know, we need to work on that as a district and have a coherent plan to address all students.
Would you mind repeating the last part of your question? I just want to make sure that with the 1 minute that I have that I really answer what you're trying to get at.
I think it was about why couldn't we get the same support? Meaning, first, English language speaking our students. So, a first language, and as you guys stated, that their 6th graders speaking, still reading at a 3rd grade level.
Gotcha. So how can we get those supports, but for all the students as well? Gotcha. Okay. So one thing that we need to do is be very, Michael uses this word a lot, very intentional about the way that we're educating our students. And I think that starts with culturally competent curriculum. Not just culturally competent teachers, but curriculum. Like how Stephanie mentioned at their school, they have books where the protagonist is black and brown. Well, I went to Nystrom where they don't have those books. And this mother, her grandmother, her grandson was in 5th grade and he was reading at a 2nd grade level. So she went into the school and asked the teacher what's going on, and the teacher says, he doesn't read. It's not that he's having trouble, he just doesn't read. And she finally got to the bottom of it. There weren't any books that the kid wanted to read. So then they ordered more books, and now they just sit on the back of some shelf in the library. They haven't even unpacked it out of the box. So we want to make sure that we don't just have culturally competent teachers, but culturally competent curriculum that is relevant to them and that they can see themselves in it. Going back to the teachers, I knew a student at Richmond High who was suspended because the teacher heard him say hella. She wasn't from here. She didn't know that hella was like a colloquial thing that we all say. So again, we need a culturally competent teachers and curriculum.
So, because we are running a little bit out of time and we want to be really respectful of your busy candidate lives, we do want to also appreciate and honor the community's questions. So there is some questions. I'm going to read them real quick and then I will send them to you and we will share them next week in our newsletter for the community. So one of the questions is, how should we tackle the issue of children with disability, like lack of reading at school, level and struggling in class, specifically elementary? The other one was, are the budget cuts going to affect sports programs? And the next one is, what will you do to make sure that our education is better in our schools? And the last one, in every 65 children today that are born with autism, what programs and or resources do you have in place or will put in place to support students who are differently abled? So those questions will be sent out to you.
Afterwards, can you tell me who asked that last question? Because I would like to talk to them.
Yes, the translator.
When I went to the special research from San Francisco University, every 69 children who are born now have autism, which means the district had to, in 4 years, they're going to be in preschool. They need to really be prepared for those kind of problems, I would say, because we are not prepared for those things.
I've worked with kids on the spectrum, and I had opened a center for kid's 18 months old to get discrete training, so I really want to talk to you.
One short thing about the policemen in the district. 20 years ago, say they are going to train the policemen from Richmond and San Paulo in order to deal with the autistic children. They never did that. And I saw so many things that the child was handcuffed when he was severely autistic and he broke a glass of the vase and the whole thing.
That's heartbreaking.
Yes.
That should never happen.
Thank you for sharing that. We are going to end with a statement from a concerned parent.
Pero voy a necesitar. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Reina Flores y como madre de 3 niños nacidos aquí en Richmond he pasado por Early Head Start, he sido parte de YMCA. Como madre de 3 niños, he sido beneficiada con Early Head Start, he sido parte de Head Start, YMCA, Traditional School, Wilson Specific.
I was blessed because I was able to enjoy the program that had a start in YMCA.
Traditional School
Las escuelas
de Wilson.
Escuelas tradicionales.
La Wilson específicamente. Charter School. Y ahora una private school. Y me gustaría solicitarles a todos ustedes cuando lleguen al cargo al cual se están postulando, solicitarles que tomen en cuenta de la misma manera a las escuelas tanto tradicionales
¿Qué es lo que quiere que tengan en cuenta?
Para que cuando las escuelas tradicionales y las escuelas charters lleven alguna petición a ustedes porque tienen las mismas necesidades, porque todas las escuelas tienen estudiantes latinos, aprendices de ingleses, de bajos ingresos, afroamericanos,
low income, African American too,
y estudiantes con necesidades especiales,
special needs,
tanto que necesitan ayuda emocional, a los cuales en muchos casos no se les da los servicios como deberían de dárseles, pues dicen que no hay fondos suficientes. Así como también, y muy importante, el hecho de que tomen en cuenta lo que es la prevención y la intervención temprana. Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that concludes our candidate forum. We greatly appreciate you coming. Like I said, this is one more question from Sienna, who is in the, what grade are you studying? The 5th grade. And she said, it makes me feel sad when the teachers ignore you while you're raising your hand. So she wanted to make sure that she stated that. And what will you do so that that doesn't happen? So I will share these with you all, and we will share them in our newsletter so that the community can get those responses. Thank you again, and you're welcome to grab some more food and mingle, network. Thank you.